Before we jump into this podcast, let's just have a first word from our sponsors, NordVPN, the fastest VPN in the world and an absolute essential travelling companion. You can use NordVPN on 10 devices with just one account, easily switching your virtual location to access apps and websites in other countries. But if you're out of the country, make sure that you've got NordVPN to be able to use your subscriptions and watch the live sport that you might miss. If you're at home, use it to see if you can save money with products that might be cheaper in another region. Go to nordvpn.com/Manchester to get 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. The link is also in the podcast description.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of the Manchester is Red / Talking City podcast. The usual drill for Derby weekend. We're bringing the two podcasts together. I was going to say for one time only, but obviously it's for 2 times only if there's 2 derbies a season. I'm Tyrone Marshall, the neutral man in the corner today, the referee, if you will. I'm joined by Samuel Luckhurst and Simon Bajkowski in our studio. A red pillow behind Samuel and a blue pillow behind Simon, so you can work out who's who. But how are we doing, chaps?
I feel like I'm a guest on a Sophie Ridge's Sky News programme. There's a Labour representative and a Tory representative. I wouldn't want to say who is who in those 2 states.
See, I feel like I'm on Gladiators, so it just shows the different kinds of programmes we watch.
Mark Clattenburg over in the corner, referee in there. So I mean, how are we? We'll come on to the derby in greater detail, but first of all, are we looking forward to this weekend?
Yes, although it does feel like probably the most inconsequential derby since Stuart Pearce was the City manager. I was racking my brains to try and think when was the last time there was a derby that didn't feel particularly significant, and you are probably going back nearly 20 years. But please carry on and listening to this. those of you who've downloaded it.
It sort of makes it matter more a bit though, really, because the derby has become kind of a bit inconsequential for City in the sense that they've had greater prizes to go for. Yeah. Whereas now, like, the derby means a hell of a lot more to City than it did in previous seasons because it's all they've got to go on. And also they've got to try and avoid, the losing to United at home was probably the worst defeat of the season. In a season of lows, probably the lowest. So to lose twice to this United team would be, probably, the worst set of results since going back to Stuart Pearce's days or something like that. So there's a lot on it.
I mean, for league table wise, there's more on it for City anyways. And it's kind of easy to forget that City are in this battle to make the Champions League. I think we all think they will get there, but they are back in 5th after last night. They are in the last spot. So league table wise, there's more on it for City anyway. But for pride as well, by the sounds of what you say inside, there's more on it for them.
Yeah, there is. And also, they will never tire of finishing above United. They will never tire of kind of keeping United as low as possible. And, I think it's not like a major thing, but United haven't yet got 40 points. And as if City can play their part in keeping United from getting towards that 40-point mark, like that would be
a TIFO next season. That.
Yeah. I'm sure United have got the 115 scarves ready. So I think if City can play that part in contributing to United's worst ever season, then they will take some enjoyment in that in a season where they haven't had much to enjoy.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, for United, it feels almost. I mean, it's the second. This week is the second most important game, or the least important game, whichever way you want to phrase it. Whichever one of those is right. But essentially, Lyon is far more important than the derby, isn't it, this week for United?
Yeah, and it's been Europa League or bust for several months, probably dating back to, I think, late December when they had that run of 4 defeats on the spin. You had the sense then that this lot aren't even going to get in the top half of the table, never mind the top 4 or the top 5 as it is now. So the only route back to the Champions League was going to be through the Europa League. They still had the FA Cup to play for at that point, but I wasn't quite aware of how little prize money you got for winning the FA Cup. I mean, that is a competition that is purely all about glory. I mean, the money barely comes into it, whereas Champions League, just qualifying for it, there's a reason why Arsenal used to have dressing room celebratory pictures when they finished in the top 4. Not that I agree with that, but it does make a huge difference as to what you can do going forward. And for United, it is a borderline doomsday scenario if they don't qualify next season, because it'll be the first time they've gone 2 seasons without playing in it since they re-entered the competition in 1993. And also the financial mire they're in at the moment, even though it feels like it's calmed down a bit just because Ratcliffe has come out and given all these interviews and said, or they would have gone bust, but for these redundancies, which I don't think anybody really, truly, properly believes that they were going to. So the Lyon game, of course, that takes precedence, but that is still, there's a 4-day gap. So, some of the selections that Amorim made at Forest, it gave the illusion that he was pointlessly rotating. I think the game on Sunday, that there shouldn't be any sense of rotation there. He should just be playing the best team possible against City.
How are both teams shaping up coming into it then? We'll start with United, Samuel. You were there on Tuesday night. I watched Roma did City on Wednesday. It had felt going into this international break like there was some kind of low-key improvement for United. I think it was 3 defeats in 17 before heading to Forest, and without anyone really realising, it felt like things were getting better. Was Tuesday a step backwards and a reminder that maybe they'd just been facing easier opposition, or is there still kind of a little bit of momentum heading into this game?
No, that modicum of momentum they had, that's gone, and it's just the circumstance of the way they lost to Forest, in that they concede a 5th-minute goal and then they can't score for, well, including added time, it would have been pushing 100 minutes because it was quite a lengthy added time.
They still wouldn't have scored now, would they?
No, they wouldn't. And it's the same old story with them. It's that has been the problem with a lot of their defeats this season from a journalistic perspective. They've lost in such banal ways, with the exception of maybe a few, thinking Liverpool, Spurs and Newcastle at home, certainly with the Xerxes substitution in that. And that's another issue altogether going into this weekend's game. United have lost 7 Premier League games at Old Trafford already this season. So it's another game going back to Old Trafford, playing in the Premier League. I mean, okay, they played quite well against Real Sociedad in their last home game, but that was pretty distant now, and it's a very, very different level of opposition. Watching City, certainly in the second half against Bournemouth last week, and I know Bournemouth had quite a few injuries to contend with, but that was more at the level that you expect City to play at. The first half, obviously, it didn't go well whatsoever, but it was a very creditable piece of management from Guardiola to make the change, and in the end, City won pretty much in second gear for the rest of the second half. So the momentum is clearly very much with City, and for them to get into a semi-final, that obviously is going to fuel their optimism. Whereas with United, it has subsided slightly, and this is the first of. I mean, every game's difficult for this United side, but City at home, Lyon away, Newcastle away, all of a sudden we're back in that territory where we're looking at their games and they're looking more treacherous than they were before the internationals.
Yeah, definitely. Sai, what have you made of United under Amorim? Give us your neutral view of United.
I think Ruben Amorim is a very good coach who had a very good team. I was sort of in Lisbon when Sporting demolished City in November, just before he took the United job. I think it's a classic case of, you can't just change a manager and expect things to improve if the foundations of the club are not right. And there's a lot going on at United which are not right. I'm not sure Amorim has helped the situation with kind of the stubbornness of enforcing his tactical principles and whatever. But I think it's kind of been a case from the start of like, I want to start doing things my way, and if we kind of write off this season and maybe make some progress, it can help us next season. I think the problem for United looking into it is that they still don't have anywhere near the squad that is suited for Amorim's football, and they don't have the money to spend in the summer that will get them closer to Amorim's squad. So it doesn't look like a great match from the outside. Sort of like a squad that could be good with another manager and a manager that could be good with another squad. But I don't know if they're ever going to marry each other.
I'm just going to make a note of that line to use on Sunday. What about City then? Si, we were both there on Sunday, and we were both there on Wednesday.
Like Samuel said, the second half at Bournemouth is what they will cling to. I'm surprised there weren't more asleep in the stands against Leicester or in the press box.
That second half was the most mind-numbingly 45 minutes.
I mean, 45 and the first half, we were both sat there. I was thinking, how are Southampton worse than this Leicester team? It was dreadful. You couldn't learn anything from
Pointless, aren't they?
I don't think City were particularly good. They are weaker without Erling Haaland. Marmoush has not scored any Premier League goals away from the Etihad yet, so that's his big test at Old Trafford. Guardiola was thrilled after Bournemouth and basically said, "I've got my team back. I've got this hunger, this fight." I'm not sure we saw it against Leicester, and it's been the problem all season in that, they can have a great half, or they can have a decent 90 minutes, or they can do this, and then the next 3 games you get nothing, or you get it's just so pot-marked. And
I guess we didn't need to see it against Leicester because it was just so easy, but that leaves so many questions.
But there's been so many false dawns, and I'm sat here and I could say, well, Grealish was quite good in the middle, and Gundogan has looked better in the last 2 games with some legs behind him finally. But on Monday, I could be on the podcast saying, well, Grealish was terrible, Gundogan was terrible. They were completely played off the park. It's been a season like that where you can't sort of take too much from the positives because they don't last. So it is a chance to win 3 games in a row, which will be significant. It's a chance to get closer to the top 5. And it is a team that they should be beating, and a ground where they have had no problem getting results in recent years, and where United are really struggling to get results at home this season. But I couldn't sort of say with any confidence that they'll win.
No, I think that's definitely fair. Samuel, I'll ask you the same question yesterday then. Where do you think has gone wrong for City this season as an interested observer rather than someone covering them day to day?
I think it's too simplistic just to say Rodri got injured, as influential as he is, because certainly at the start of the season, I looked at the City squad and still thought, well, they're going to be challenging for the title at the very least, and I think that's the very least that the supporters would have expected. It is just very, very difficult to sustain that quality for a 5th season. Winning 4 titles in a row was unprecedented. And at some point, there's got to be a levelling off. And they had it in 2019-20 where Liverpool, who I don't think Liverpool had even made a signing that summer or a first team sign that summer, but because the squad was so well established and they backed themselves to go that take that extra step, and they obviously did that. And then City went backwards that season. But I think for a collection of players, if you're working under someone as intense as Guardiola, I think they've done remarkably well to have sustained that level of success over a 6-year period. And you have to remind yourselves, just looking back at the honours board, how much City have won, not under Guardiola, but going back to the breakthrough in the 2011 FA Cup, which was still only 14 years ago. But the level of success is still pretty staggering. And I know, obviously, that the charges we'll have to wait for the outcome of that. But if you're just judging them on their purely footballing qualities, they have raised the bar to they've just raised the bar. It's a new level, and that's through brilliant coaching, brilliant football. But I suppose there was maybe not that 2019-20 season, but certainly when they were duking it out with Liverpool the season before it. I think the only signing had been Mahrez, and I did watch them at times and think, have they not freshened the squad up enough here? And then, of course, they win the title on the final day of the season. They won a domestic treble that season, so who am I to say that? But I think on this occasion, it has got to a point where some players, I mean, De Bruyne is probably the classic example. He's been the best player in the Premier League over the past 10 years, but he's clearly come to the end of the road at City now, and he's not had the influence that he's been able to exert in previous seasons. I also think, and this isn't just exclusive to City, but there are certain players who have had so much playing time in such a short period of time post-COVID that's probably caught up with them. And Foden looks to me like one of those. I think certainly in the European Championship, he wasn't used or managed properly by Gareth Southgate. And I think I can't remember who said it, but I've been told before one of the players came out, or whether it was Guardiola, that mentally it's been quite challenging for him this season, which I don't think is a surprise. And when you look at the amount of money they spent in January and the number of players they brought in, I think that's an admission that they probably should have freshened it up a lot more in the summer, rather than, I think resting on their laurels is a stretch, because you look at that squad and it's brilliant. And when they were getting offered the money they were getting offered for Julian Alvarez, it's difficult to say no to that when he's a Spanish-speaking player and playing in Spain for one of the big three clubs there, where he's going to be the main man, where he's won everything at City. It does make sense. But there were times, certainly a couple of seasons ago, where it looked like City were probably more watchable and slicker with Alvarez in the team than Haaland. But you're never going to take Haaland out of the team because he gets the goals. So I think it's difficult to really give City a kicking over that. But they have obviously gone and signed Marmoush, which is, again, it's an admission of, look, we sold ourselves short there a little bit. So they've made a fair few mistakes over the past 9 months, but they're forgivable mistakes because just look how much they've won. And I know obviously for them last season ended with them losing that cup final, but I can't believe that that's had a confidence killing effect on them as bad as that day was for them.
Yeah, definitely. It's the record speaks for itself, doesn't it, over the years and until this season, and they could still win a trophy this season once again. Right, that's all for part one. We'll be back after the break to look at some issues around the derby. Welcome back to the Manchester is Red and Talking City podcast. It's Derby Day weekend in Manchester and the locals are revolting. Big issues at both clubs, protests going on around both clubs, and believe it or not, Sir Jim, it's not because neither club is having the season they wanted either. It's been a week, I guess, where protests are going to be top of the agenda. We'll start with the game this Sunday. Samuel, another protest being organised at Old Trafford, the 1958. Organising again a sit-in this time. It's clear that this dissatisfaction at the moment is not going away, is it?
No, and the point you just made there is the relevant one, that Ratcliffe seems to think that morale and just not just at the club, among employees, but among supporters, it's always dictated by the team, and that's clearly not the case. I mean, in terms of the ticketing issues at United, it's like take your pick at where they've cocked up this season, whether it be hiking prices mid-season, scrapping concessions, turfing time-served season ticket holders out around the dugout just to essentially sell tickets to other people who are going to pay top whack for one of the best views in Old Trafford, and in some ways, perhaps most egregiously, the Rangers game, which was a repeat of Galatasaray, but a hell of a lot worse because Scottish people like a drink, and they like a drink more than Turkish supporters do. I think it's safe to say, and that was just an absolute recipe for disaster. And the blowback from that is that I remember that night. I think Fernandes scored a 96th minute winner, and I'm pretty sure I sent a message on behalf of everyone at kickoff, like, is there any comeback from clearly all these Scots and Glaswegians around the ground in the home section? And it was seconds after Fernandes scored that the reply was sent by an official at United with all this background as to this is why it's happened. And I thought, what a time to try and bury bad news.
Thank you, Bruno.
Yes, yeah. But the way that some supporters have been treated, where I'm sure people have seen these letters that they've received about threats of bannings because they didn't take their seat during the game, and they've been accused of shifting their tickets. And ultimately, people were intimidated last night. They couldn't get to their seats because you had loads of Rangers fans congregating around certain areas where they would be sat. We saw it with our own eyes, and it's not the first time that the United ticket office has aired in the way that they have. So I suspect that they will be hoping that Athletic Bilbao win their Europa League quarter-final this month.
Yes, definitely. And Si, there was a protest at the Etihad on Wednesday night. You went to pre-match. We saw what happened inside the stadium when, thousands of supporters poured in after the 9th minute and watched the opening 9 minutes on the concourse. We've not spoken about it on a podcast since, but it was a really eye-catching protest, wasn't it? And it was very visible that all 4 stands took part, and it really did make a statement, didn't it?
Yeah, and it was kind of especially effective because the south stand was where most people stayed away, especially just behind the goal. Yeah. And that was the goal that Jack Grealish scored in after 2 minutes. And after 2 minutes, Jack Grealish scores, and you could have had people rushing in wanting to see, and they didn't. They stayed on the concourse and sang 1-0 to the empty seats and things like that. And some other chants which we can't broadcast. But yeah, it's, similar to the United one. It's direction of travel. These are the same fans protesting who tens of thousands of them missed the Community Shield in 2023, which is the first game after the treble, first chance to acknowledge the treble heroes. They missed that in protest at the kickoff time and various things. As amazing a night as it was for them in Istanbul, there's a lot of bad blood around Istanbul because the fans were treated appallingly, and the official City fan board put together this report of everything that had gone wrong and what they wanted from it. And even the UEFA president admitted that UEFA hadn't been great. No public acknowledgement from City. There's not been a feeling that the club have backed the supporters over anything. And even over the 115 charges, the club have maintained their silence throughout, which is fine. But it's the fans that have had to cop for it. Because it's the fans who are sort of being on the receiving end of all the abuse and everything like that all the time. So these fans feel like they're taking a lot for the club. And then all the ticketing decisions this season, from sort of trying to charge disabled fans to park for the first time before the sort of embarrassing climb down. And then, City agreed to a meeting with their official fan board over season tickets for next season. And then just didn't set a date, just ghosted them, essentially, for 6 weeks. And then that led to half the fan board to go on strike. And then they finally agreed to it. And then on the same day, they said, oh, by the way, we've signed a new ticket resale partner with Viagogo. Happy days.
United used to have a partnership with them.
Yeah.
But I mean, that must have been nearly 20 years ago. But the optics of that, it's just, you look at that website and people think, well, it's just like legalized touting.
Yeah. And City have had big games against Real Madrid and Liverpool where away fans have been in the home end in the last few months, and City fans have just had enough because they don't feel like the club is pulling in their direction and being behind them. And I don't see it changing anytime soon.
Yeah, and I guess, there are obviously differences to some of these issues and to the protest, and obviously a lot of the United ones still revolve around the Glazers and the debt. But generally, a lot of these issues, certainly around ticketing, are from the same area, aren't they? And it's the same at both clubs. It feels like the same people who are most vociferous now, who are protesting, and that is your longest fans, your most loyal supporters, your season ticket holders, generally your local fans. It is, your local fans who are going every week that are protesting. And I know there'll be season ticket holders from all around the country that come to both clubs, and that's fine. But just saying, generally, it feels like it's these local fans, your most loyal fans, who have got these issues. And it feels a worrying time to be what probably both clubs are referring to as legacy fans. But basically, it feels a worrying time to be someone who's a season ticket holder who, maybe can only just afford that season ticket or has had it for 20 years or whatever. But also, these clubs have got to listen to their most loyal supporters, because this is an issue that's not going away. But both clubs seem to be determined to change their ticketing policy at the moment, don't they? And to almost, it's almost like they don't want season ticket holders anymore. They want people who will turn up and pay tourists who will pay a premium for every game, don't they? So it's a real issue, I think, for both clubs at the moment.
I think it'll become a bigger issue because City are obviously expanding the Etihad, and Ratcliffe wants this 100,000 seater stadium, which is quite right. I fully agree that Old Trafford should be rebuilt, it should be bigger. But as a lot of earthy time-served supporters have said, and you know it already, the makeup of the support there will be even different, because you'll have an extra 25,000, best part 30,000 fans turning up. The ticket prices for that new stadium, if it ever gets built, will be a hell of a lot more expensive than they are now, because that's just the way it works, as you've seen with the Emirates, as you've seen with the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That will price out, unless United get their act together and are fair about it, that will price out more local supporters or UK-based supporters. And then, do you want this tourist-centric makeup of support? No, of course you don't. I mean, I was going back to the Etihad. I don't know what the circumstances were around it, but when Haaland scored to make it 2-1, and he ran charging off into a corner, and you saw the supporters there, and you thought, I had some friends messaging say, like, is that meant to be the away end or the home end? Because it was the City end, but it was so passive. And I thought, this is City just going 2-1 up against Real Madrid in the last 10 minutes of a European Cup knockout tie. But those people there didn't really seem like they understood what the hell was going on. And that's because of the way City are going through their process of selling tickets. And we've had it with United as well before. And I'm sure that would probably get worse. But the thing that they've got, the supporters have got in their favour, is that they aren't just taking this. They're not just sitting idly by. They are mobilising, and they are getting a hell of a lot of publicity for it. I mean, the thing about it's Twitter is not great for a number of reasons, but with that City game on Wednesday, it's not on television, but you see the pictures that you guys are taking, and immediately, and you think, well, why is that like that? I remember Fulham last season when they played against United, they had all those yellow leaflets out, protesting against the rise of ticket prices. And like, I remember a friend messaged at the time saying, what are all those leaflets from Fulham fans? And people would have been obviously Googling that, and then they'd have stumbled upon or come across the answer, because it was an effective form of fan protest.
It's like you said on Wednesday, City said they want the North Stand to be a blue wall, but are issuing no season tickets.
Yeah,
in the extra seating. These two things don't really balance up, do they?
No, and we've got to be really careful, because nobody wants to say no new fans are ever allowed in stadiums. But and also, plenty of us have gone to games in other countries,
Barcelona or Dortmund,
but there's a reason why people want to go to Dortmund rather than Bayern. People want to see the yellow wall, and people want to see the Kop and the Stretford end or the Etihad. And the game on Wednesday, the first 10 minutes, was the closest I felt to being at a game since COVID, since the pandemic. It just felt like there was no atmosphere, and what is the point in selling all these tickets at inflated prices? And if you buy a ticket for a higher price, you expect more, so then to turn up and find the products less. But I mean, there were a few idiots on social media being like, "Oh, City should be grateful they're not in League One." Rah rah rah. But I think the problem has got greater across the league this season.
Yeah.
But I think there are more solutions, or more people fighting against it, because finally we've stopped so much tribalism, and I think fan bases are working more together. I know City and United groups have worked together, but also worked with Liverpool and Everton and West Ham and Tottenham, and everyone is coming together. The FSA, Dominic Cummings-esque slogan of "Stop Exploiting Loyalty" is brilliant, because it is what it says on the tin, and it doesn't need to bring in all those different kind of areas that sketch into more dangerous territory, because it is just stop pricing these loyal fans out of the game.
Yeah, and like you said, the FSA have done some great work this season. I think both City Liverpool games, the FSA's banner's been there. I know it was at Old Trafford, maybe the Fulham FA Cup game, I want to say, not entirely sure now. And you mentioned social media there. I mean, I was looking on social media in the first 9 minutes on Wednesday, and a lot of it from the United accounts I follow, a lot of them were actually saying this is great to see. And it would be nice to see, maybe sometime next season, the two, like you say, the two groups are working together kind of in the background, but almost a joint protest. And I know, like you say, the Glazers is kind of a different thing, and I'm sure City fans will mock United over Glazer ownership because that's just what you do with football. But the ticketing thing is certainly an area where both sets of fans could work together, isn't it? Because the fears are essentially the same. The fears are that these fans, these season ticket holders, these local fans are going to be priced out of games in the future.
But especially in this city as well, there is
that's what I mean.
there is that rivalry because you want to sort of tease your mates about it. You can't tease your mates as much if both you're on your sofas. Yeah. So, it's a huge part of the fabric of this city, and it's in danger of being lost if both clubs continue with, the direction of travel that they are with the tickets.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're red or blue, but if Mancunians can't afford to go to the Old Trafford or Etihad, then you've got a problem. You've got a problem. Right, back to the game then. Let's finish on the game. I mean, it feels like kind of expect the unexpected. Both, it's very difficult to call, isn't it? I don't think we've gone into previous derbies in the last few years and always thought City would win, and they haven't always won. But you've gone into them thinking they're going to win. This time, I don't feel different. Maybe you'd say City are slight favourites, but feels a hard one to call, and anything could happen really.
I think City have to be favourites for it purely because United are 13th in the table, and they've also lost, as I said earlier, 7 home league games this season. City's record at Old Trafford is very good. I double-checked it this morning. They've won 6 of their last 9 at United and only lost 2 of those. And those 2 wins for United, they did pretty much mark high points in those seasons. The McTominay goal just before COVID impinged on everyone's freedoms, and the Ten Hag first season when United came from 1-0 down with that rather contentious equaliser, and then there was the 1-2 punch of Rashford making it 2-1 and winning the game. And at that point, you almost felt, are they in City slipstream as well? Because they were quite close to them in the table. I think it might have been only 1 point behind them, but of course, as is often the case with United, it was just a full storm. But certainly going into this weekend's game, the interesting thing from, I think, in terms of what Amorim does, is that he said how much he loves Mason Mount. Is that love going to blossom in the spring here? Because the last time he started a game was actually the last derby, and he broke down after 12 minutes. He's been training now for nearly 4 weeks. He was someone who was bought as a midfielder, weirdly, a central midfielder for a 4-2-3-1. That was never going to work. He could almost become an accidentally successful signing because there's a coach who plays a system that he is better suited to, even if we are judging him off a couple of games that were nearly 4 years ago with Chelsea and England in major finals. But the problem that United had in the week was that I said it at the top. I think I said to Stephen that he made such obvious selection mistakes by playing Xerxes up front and taking Fernandes out of midfield, where he's been so influential of late, and putting him back as one of the 2 10s, that you could have written a piece on it before a ball was kicked, because Amorim has said himself that Xerxes is not a number 9, so it was baffling that he played him particularly when Haaland had just scored his first goal in 21 games or whatever it was. So, yeah, it as I said earlier, it's not the most consequential of derbies for United, and certainly the build up to it is nowhere near at the level of what it has been for a couple of derbies in recent years, and when Mourinho and Guardiola were both in town. But you can't diminish it too much. They've got to try and regain momentum to take it into the game against Lyon on Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess for City, the big talking point is going to be that attack without Haaland. It feels harsh to say it's not clicking, given Marmoush scored when he came on at Bournemouth, albeit
and scored against Leicester.
But the wingers don't score very often. Does Foden come back in for Grealish? That's probably the area where pre-match discussion's going to focus on. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, it's funny because there's so much chat around how City are a better team without Haaland, and then as soon as Haaland goes out the team, you're like, oh, actually, no, they're really struggling. It's almost as if he's the best striker in the world. It's the attack is under pressure to deliver, and Pep said after the last game on Wednesday, he was like, oh yeah, we created enough chances, so positive. And then someone was like, well, should you not really be doing better with your chances though? And he was like, yeah, maybe. So it's going to be a question of, form versus reputation, really. Do you bring Foden or De Bruyne or both back in? There's a weak spot at fullback, probably. Does Mateus Nunes play again? Sort of cost City the first derby, has cost City again and again. Does Rico Lewis play instead of him? Confidence is absolutely on the floor. Looks shadow of the player he was at the start of the season. Do you maybe start Nico O'Reilly at left back and then play Kusanov at right back, and therefore don't have to play Nunes or Lewis, and give United something new to think about, possibly? But it is going to be a sort of, City will want an 11 where the lineup is at least the sum of their parts, and that hasn't been the case for most of this season. So it's going to be interesting to see which way Guardiola goes with it all.
Yeah. Let's finish with not necessarily predictions then, because I know how you all hate them. But what do we expect? Let's start with United. What kind of performance do we expect from United? Because I guess it feels like under Amorim, games like this, certainly away from home and occasionally at home, the bigger games, the teams that let them kind of sit back and strike on the counter, that they've looked a lot better.
Yeah. The second half against Arsenal, which would have been, that was their last home league game, I think. The second half against Arsenal, they were very good, even though they didn't score. The first half against Arsenal, I thought they were unwatchable until Raya let Fernandes score from his free kick. So, in terms of United at home, Amorim has said how anxious they are, and you'd like to think that there'll be a different atmosphere on Sunday from some of the home games they've had this season, where there has been this, you've almost felt this palpable sense of dread or resignation, because whether it's Brighton, who always seem to win at Old Trafford, or whether it's Palace, who have form for winning at Old Trafford, United do not have that fear factor. And funnily enough, City don't really have that fear factor anymore. It's probably the first time City are going to United, I'd say in 10 years, where you've thought there's nothing to really to fear there. Under Pellegrini, when United were in very good form at that time, and you did properly fancy them. So it does feel like the playing field's a lot more level, certainly, than the Old Trafford derby last season, where City won 3-0, and as we all know, City have won 3-0, or at least scored at least 3 goals a fair few times at Old Trafford in recent years. Which leads me to think it's why United will. I don't think United will win. I can see them getting a draw, because have they really had that big home domestic win this season? I don't think they have. Like the biggest home win was probably, in terms of the significance, was against Real Sociedad, because it ensured that they stayed in the Europa League. But they've had some real bad ones at home this season. They've not had. It feels like it's been a while since they had a home victory in the league where you thought, that could mark a corner turned or a turn point, or maybe it was a false dawn. I mean, they had it last season with the amount of wins that they procured with last minute goals, whether it was McTominay against Brentford or Ahmad in the FA Cup game against Liverpool. But just because of how bad they have been at home this season, that's why I struggle to see them winning, certainly, and that momentum that they were building from the games against Arsenal, Sociedad and Leicester, which, there's a reason why even United can score 3 against Leicester City. That has pretty much gone, and it was quite a while ago anyway, just because of this inordinately long gap over the inconvenient international breaks timing.
Yeah, absolutely. Si, are City going to deliver a statement performance at Old Trafford?
I don't think so. But kind of on the flip side of that United diagnosis, City should win, and I think they will win, because they are I think they are through the worst of their form this season, but I don't think they're fully out of the trees enough that they're not going to sort of give United some chances and some opportunities to let them in. I think, City will put up some very poor play that allows United to score or at least be presented with a very, very good chance. And it's how City deal with that and at what state of the game it's in. But City should be winning the game. And I do think the general mood and confidence will kind of carry them through. At the end of the day, it's been such a tough season. And these players are only human and they're hurting. And the derby really hurt them. And they want to put it right. And they kind of know for the first time in 6, 7, 8 years or whatever that their futures are on the line as well, because the rebuild's already started. It'll continue in the summer. They've got, the 9, 10 games to maybe win a trophy. More importantly, get into the top 4 in the Premier League and stay there. They're not in the top 4 as of Sunday's kickoff and could be lower down the table than 5th if other results go against them. So there is work to do, and if they're not seen to be doing that work, they'll be out. So there's still a lot to motivate them.
Yeah, absolutely. That is what our experts make of it then. We'll see on Sunday just how expert they are. If they got it wrong, do feel free to let them know on social media. I'm sure they'll be up for a chat about it. We'll have you covered from every angle, of course, on Derby Day, every cough, spit, and the occasional kick as well. So stay tuned to the MEN, the website, all our social media channels on Sunday. And the podcast will be back on Monday. These two will be separated by then. We'll be back to talking City and Manchester is Red. So tune into whichever is your preferred medium and get all the diagnosis from Derby Day. But for now, thanks for listening. Please remember to leave us a review, like, subscribe to get Monday's podcast in your feed. Enjoy Derby Day, and we'll speak to you all soon.